The Charlotte real estate market keeps shifting, but most people don't see where it's changing or why. And so in this 2026 April update, we're breaking down what's happening right now as of April 1st. What's selling, what's sitting, where prices are adjusting, and what this means if you're buying or selling or thinking about it anytime in the next 6 to 12 months. We got some market projections, and we also have some fresh, hot data for everything that happened in March, unpacking that and giving you some insights. Yesterday, I made a couple of short form videos on my Instagram that you can go follow at Lucas Roller, just like my name right there, at Lucas Roller on Instagram, talking about some of the trends that I've seen over the past couple of years. And so I'm gonna unpack all this data here in just 1 second. I'll go ahead and screen share. But the high level overview that I want you to think of this like the framework. It's the skeleton that I want you to keep in mind as we start to explore individual pieces of data and put together the narrative. Because I'll be real, as I look at this data, I already did some research ahead of time, pulled some of the numbers myself. But in terms of looking at this, we are looking at this together on this live stream so that you can get, again, the most real-time data. And I'm going to interpret what I'm seeing, right? But we are discovering this together. This is a collaboration. So two of the things that I've noticed from working with our clients, for those of you that don't, just put this in perspective, the average realtor works with about 3 clients per year. We currently active have 88 clients right now. So the volume of data that we see, just qualitatively, not even getting into quantitative data, is much, much more real-time, much more granular than what almost anybody, at least in the Charlotte market, is going to see, particularly on the buy side. And so one of the big trends that we've noticed this year that is kind of similar to last year, but also different, history doesn't do the same thing twice, but it rhymes. I forget how that saying goes, but there's many things that are very similar this year to last year and previous years, but they are definitely different. So a couple of the things I'm going to cover are, one, we have some very slow, like uncharacteristically slow segments in the market. We also have some uncharacteristically fast segments in the market right now. And March itself as a month has been incredibly interesting. When you look at just like the last few years, it's been an incredibly interesting month because we've seen some different buying behavior that also then changes buying behavior later in the year. And it's important to understand this as you're trying to strategize, whether that is for selling or for buying, to make sure that you get a good deal. Because all of our clients know, my goal is never just any single transaction. My team's goal is never any single transaction. Our goal every single time is to give you a phenomenal experience and get you a phenomenal deal, whether you're buying or selling, that is better than market average, and will give you flexibility so that you can do whatever is going to be the best for you and your family, whether that's 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 20 years from now. We want to give you options. Again, whether that's during the buying or selling process or after the buying or selling process, we don't want to lock you into only one particular kind of option. Like, oh, you won't be able to sell or you're going to have to sell. No, we want to give you the options so that not only do you have a house you really like, but you also have the optionality and the lifestyle that you also want. Because a home purchase, home sale is only one part of a much larger puzzle of your life. You know, it's one piece of you as a whole person, and we want to take that whole person into consideration because that's who we're serving. We're not serving the transaction, we are serving the person who puts their trust and big chunk of finances into working with us and trusts us with that, and we take that very seriously. So I'm gonna show a few just overview items here, and then we'll get into slow segments, fast segments, and then the market trends and what that means. So just to give you a quick primer on data, so that we're making sure that we are speaking the same language. Maybe I should make a video on this. If you're interested in how to interpret some of this data that I'm going to be going over, let me know, and I'll make a dedicated video for that. It's very important for really understanding what we're looking at. And you can share with your friends, family, co-workers who are interested in this sort of stuff. Let me know if that'd be helpful. So, got to get my morning Celsius. If you know somebody that can get me sponsored, I need to be sponsored by Celsius. Right now, I'm just doing it for free. So, as you look at the market trends, so one, you're going to see a lot of numbers thrown around, especially by people that make content. Sometimes those people have access to good data. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just repeat stuff they heard, and sometimes they're looking at the wrong data even if they have access to it. So I can't tell you how many people have seen, oh, the Charlotte median sales price is like 380 or like 375. And that is not true. The entire MLS has a median price of that. But to put this in perspective, for the MLS that serves Charlotte, it's not just Charlotte. Canopy MLS goes as far west as Asheville, all the way down to like close to Spartanburg, Fort Mill, Rock Hill, Lancaster, all the way up to sometimes even seeing properties all the way in Greensboro. It's not the primary MLS, but we do see it up there. Hickory, Statesville, Wilkesboro, it's a very large area that takes many different little metros into one statistical area. And so what you want to make sure you're looking at is the Charlotte metro service area. That's piece one. Piece two is we want to look at both trends over 3-year, 5-year. I really like the 10-year because it shows you at least for trends, it shows you, because really you're looking, actually, let me take a step back. There's two things you're looking at. You're either looking at trends over time or trends in terms of seasonality. So for trends in terms of season or over time, I really like looking at the 10-year because that gives you enough data to really get a good feel for, hey, this small tick up right now is nothing compared to the historical time frame. However, it is interesting because, and I'll get into this later, there's a lot of similarities between today and 2016. And the interesting thing about 2016 is everybody thought, wow, the market is so hot. I don't know what's going to happen after this. And then we saw what happened after this. It was this massive run-up driven by a shortage of housing that we are still experiencing. However, then interest rates hiked up and it helped cool this off, but God forbid rates come back down, which I think there's a pretty good case that they may. We're going to see insanity again, which I really hope we don't. But c'est la vie. So, number one is, again, looking over time for the overall market trends. I also like to look at either the 3-year or the 5-year, and you can look at rolling 12 months of activity where each data point is 12 months of activity. So it basically averages out 12 months of activity to give you that number. Or you can look at true month-to-month activity. Now, the reason that you don't always want to look at this is twofold. One, because if you're trying to look at trends over time, it's really hard to actually see the trends if you're looking at individual months. Two, and this is the important one, when we're looking at like the entire MLS, right? Or the Charlotte MSA, there's a huge number of closings that we're looking at to get that data. So to put this in perspective, closed sales, we're looking at 2,770 data points in just Charlotte, right? Where people get into trouble is they start trying to extrapolate data points where it's really, really low volumes of transactions and try to use that as a valid way, especially for seasonality, to get any sort of useful data. Because, like, I'll give you an example. Sometimes and I have even been guilty of this from time to time. Let's say we're looking at a really, really niche market. Let's say we're looking at like in Cornelius and we want to see single family. That's all we're looking at, okay? If you take as a data point Cornelius, sure, you can kind of see some seasonality, and this might even be statistically significant. I'd have to do some number crunching to see. But it is still like 16, 20, 15 different transactions per month versus 2,100. Like you can't even see the Cornelius line because it's almost flat on there. And so then if we take that, right, and then we try to look at, let's say, the median sales price, it's so choppy and it's completely useless because you can't really get a good feel for that sort of micro, because it's such a low volume that one home sale or a couple of home sales, even if you're looking at the median, not the average, God forbid you take the average, look at that even more so. I know this is kind of boring, right? But I'm trying to keep it fun, and two, I want to illustrate how important it is to make sure that you're looking at more statistically significant sample sizes, because now on the 12-month rolling average, that means we're looking at probably about 350 data points then for each of those months for Cornelius, which is still a drop in the bucket versus 25,000 data points for each of these. But it gives you something that at least looking at trends is going to be much more useful data. So that's my quick primer on stats and what we're going to look at here. So looking at the market as a whole, we want to look at specifically the Charlotte MSA. And what you're going to notice is a slight tick up in terms of the median sales price. And seasonally, if we look at March, we were at 400,000 even. Last year, 399. Year before that, 385. Year before that was 370. And year prior to that was 370. So it's a slight tick up, but still pretty flat overall. And one of the interesting things, though, is if we look at specifically the median days on market. March was one of the hottest months I've ever seen. I had clients that put in multiple offers and lost out even bidding over ask on property, which I will say, sidebar on that. Everybody asks, oh, should we offer, what's the market? Should we offer above ask, below ask, right at ask? Well, it depends on what ask is. I've seen properties that, $1 million, it will never be worth that. It's worth maybe 250,000. I've also seen properties where $1 million would be a steal. So the list price all depends on the listing strategy, because this is something that good listing agents do. This is something we do for all of our listings, and you should make sure your listing agent is doing as well, is that you have a strategy depending on the individual property, the seller's goals, and the market conditions for that property that they want to sell. You're not going to treat everything the same way. And so it is more common, right, to be offering at or above ask in a really hot market, but every single property is still its own project, its own set of data that we have to look at and come to a decision whether we're buying or selling, how we're going to price it, and also what we're going to offer to hopefully win an offer. And sometimes the best deals that you'll ever get on a home are the homes that you don't end up buying. You either decide to pass or lose out on the offer. And we've seen it both sides, where we had seller clients that got an offer we never thought they would get. We got buyer clients that got a deal we never thought they would get. So we do our best, trust the process, and let the process take care of the rest. That said, so March, if you really want to gauge how hot a market is, the two things you're going to look at is 1, days on market, 2, months of supply, because supply is basically how much inventory is there in a market and how long does it take to be absorbed by the buyer activity. And that's really just like how scarce, think about it that way, how scarce of a resource are homes in a given market. So as we look here, you can see this is a massive change. 46 to 33 days on market median. It's higher than some of these last few months were, but it still is an insane change. To put this in perspective, again, like 31 to 24, pretty big dip. Last March was also one of the hottest years we've ever seen. In 2024, it was low. The difference was we had almost no inventory, and so it's stuff still wasn't moving that fast. It's just a lot of the stuff, because there were so few homes, it was moving relatively quickly. But to put this into, like, whenever everybody talks about how insane 21, 22 were, even 23 to some extent, that was 4. It's like the delta here, the change from 46 to 33 was 13. So the change in 1 month was 4 times what it was in 21 and 22. And that's why this market felt like a wild shift. And we saw this last year as well. Now, why that matters is when you get into these offer scenarios, or as a seller into these bidding scenarios, a very interesting thing happens psychologically. So one, on the buy side, it tends to drive FOMO. And so especially when you lose 3 offers in a row and nobody else that you know is doing that, it is very easy for people to be like, screw it, we're going to just keep offering more due diligence, more non-refundable deposit. Let's just do this thing, right? And I'll tell you a story, because actually this happened with one of our clients this past week. It was the 3rd offer in a row. We wrote what we felt was like a very aggressive but a fair offer. And it was honestly what the client wanted to do. We made our advisement. What the client wanted to do was still a little bit more aggressive than what I wanted to do. We voiced our concerns. It's what they wanted to do. And at the end of the day, one of the 6 fiduciary duties is obedience. And it's also the first and most important one. So we do as they say. We voice our concerns. We give them great advice. But we do as we're told, as long as it is legal and ethical. So the offer we put in, it was a little bit more aggressive than I felt comfortable with, but it was what the client wanted to do. And it was the 3rd offer in a row that they lost. And that is, a real punch in the gut. And they've been great sports about it. They've been phenomenal clients. Danny and Lindsay, we love you very much. But they, so we lost out the 3rd offer. And I was like, that's insane. I texted. Actually, I'm going to look this up right now live. I texted Andrew, my business partner, the other gentleman from the other YouTube, about this, because no way. There's no way. Let's see. Let's see. Because I couldn't believe this happened. Here we go. Offered over ask, somehow multiple different, and this is one of those super hot segments that I'll talk about here in a little bit. Offered over ask, big due diligence, and wrote it non-contingent too, because they need to sell their home. And they went with another offer on the house. I was like, and we did over non-contingent, blah, blah, blah. Yep. And he was like, I can't believe it either. And I was like, this is absolutely stupid as hell that somebody else wrote a better offer. And I was like, hey, if somebody's going to be dumb, at least it wasn't us, because there's no way that an offer that was quote unquote better could be a good decision for that buyer. And so interestingly, then I get a text then a day or two later, or actually I sent one more follow-up text on that saying, let's plan to stay sensitive to their timeline to move and keep writing offers. If they do plan to sell within a couple of years, I don't want us to have approved of or encouraged a panic offer or a panic purchase where they end up with a crazy appraisal gap, because I suspect that this is going to be similar to last year, where March is just unusually hot and then later in the year it cools off and there's buying opportunities in September or October. And he was like, yeah, no, 100%. And so then we get a text from that listing agent a couple days later saying, deal is falling apart. Buyer decided he didn't like the zoning in the area, and so they've received another offer as well. Going back to everybody and getting showings again today. Let me know if your buyers are still interested. So we circled back on it, wrote the same exact offer as the first go round, and ended up winning that offer scenario. And so the lesson learned there is sometimes you got to make a little bit of a deal with the devil in order to get deals through, depending on what time of year you're shopping. So like March, April is a difficult time of the year to shop. And so, again, especially for them, their priorities, their timeline, the things that they need, they were willing to pay a little bit extra, which honestly I think still will probably be at appraised value. We'll see very shortly. But it still was a little bit more aggressive than I wanted to, because I feel like that's just not generally necessary. And for anybody that's patient, we can just sit and be patient and wait until we get, as they say in baseball, we get a really fat pitch, something that's easy to just knock out of the park. Because we had multiple clients last year. We had 4 different clients that closed with over $80,000 in equity because we just got their home below market value by a big chunk, because we waited for a seller that really needed to sell. Because some sellers don't need to sell. I have a client right now that I'm listing their home. They don't need to sell. They were really thinking about selling, and now they're kind of indifferent. And so if they get the right offer, they're going to sell. There's also, however, many sellers that are not in that scenario who really need to sell. And the best thing that they can do is just sit and wait for the fat pitch, or buyer clients in that scenario, to find the right seller that really needs to sell. And conversely, it's a little bit harder just because the supply demand inequality. But there's a lot of sellers as well, like the listing where they don't really need to sell, that I have right now. Even though that's new news, like all we have to do is find a buyer that their property is unique enough that it will work for the right buyer, and that buyer needs to buy, because then we'll be able to drive a little bit better return for them. So anyways, that's my side quest, my tangent on the market as a whole. I will say, so one of the interesting things you can also do, so let's just look at month supply here as well. You can see there's seasonality to this. You have low number of months in the spring, early part of the year, especially going into March, April, May. And why that's important is historically the best deals of the year are had either in put under contract September, October, and then close October, November. And you'll notice it's because out of the entire year as a whole, that's where you have the most months of supply. You have this inequality that favors the buy side. So there are some sellers that just have to sell, and so they are willing, while everybody else is willing to negotiate a little bit, they have to be able to be willing to negotiate a ton in order to compete. And so that's where the best deals are always had. And this is predictable. It is statistically predictable. There was a study by Realty Track of 32 million transactions. And what they also found, which I can see it, again, and I'm local to the market, so it's easy for me to say this, they took the time and the cost to actually crunch the numbers, and based on 32 million transactions, they found that for Charlotte, North Carolina, the best time of the year to buy historically was middle of September to middle of October. They can't keep gassing me up like this, or else I'm going to get a big head from being right so much. But partially joking. This is, again, the Charlotte market as a whole. What I like to do is break it out by asset type because it shows you a little bit of a different story. So right now, especially lots and acreage moving very slowly. But I'm going to show you something here in a second that is so interesting. So interesting. Because this is one of the first times ever in history that we have seen this. If you look at, again, breaking this out by, we'll say the big three, we can look at multifamily. Actually, if you're an investor in either land, farms, or multifam, let me know. Drop a comment down below, and I can make a specific market video for y'all as well. But what you're going to see here is, one, literally everything started moving quickly. But, and this is the big but, the interesting thing is everything started moving faster in March, but you look at some of these other years, yeah, there's definitely like an increase in activity. Again, last year was insane, so I'd expect to see that. But you look at February to March the year previous, it wasn't nearly as stark of a difference for median days on market. This year is insanely hot, particularly in single family and then also in some condos and townhomes. There's a couple of market segments that are not, however. So one of those being, if we instead, let's not break this out, let's just look at condos. Median days on market did go down. But what I've noticed is if we say anything under 300,000, there was, again, a big dip in days on market because a lot of stuff that had been sitting finally got absorbed. But, and this is where it's so interesting, and you can look for this stuff, but unless you actually see it in the deals, talking to agents, working in the market, you won't feel it. Even though median days on market went down a ton, the inventory stayed the same. Why would that happen? I want you to think about that. Why would you see the median days on market drop like a rock, and then you have quite literally flat months of inventory? Because the months of inventory tells you that we have the same supply-demand curve, but the days on market tells you a different story. So why would that happen? Well, a ton of condos came on market, and a ton of condos are still sitting and not selling at that price point. So there's a incredible amount of opportunity right now for, and you see it a little bit more, but you can see even just adding the 306 to 428 price band, it was a slight improvement. Still pretty flat. Not super statistically relevant, but a little bit. What you're able to see is condos right now in that lower price point are just sitting. There's so much opportunity because everybody needs to, I won't say everybody, there's many people that need to sell that cannot sell right now in that particular asset. And then one that's moving uncharacteristically fast that I want to call out is, and we'll say a little bit higher price point. I really should bump that up a little bit more. Actually, we'll look at one other real quick. So if we're looking here at, we'll say 300 to 499, 500 to 699, 700 plus. What you're going to notice here is for single family in particular, we are seeing a lot of flat activity. And again, 2.7 months of inventory, anything below 6 is considered to be a buyer's market. Now, relative to 0.5 months of inventory back here, this looks great. 2.7 is, incredible. You have so many choices, relatively speaking. Still not that many. But it's still technically a seller's market, but it is much more buyer friendly. It's a very, very, there's good deals to be had if you just keep making offers. To put this in perspective too, a friend of mine, an investor, got a phenomenal single family deal back in right around here, early 2022. He wrote to get a deal here. He did get a pretty good deal, but to be able to win a deal here, he got a property that needed some work. It was a project house, and he wrote 86 offers to finally get a good deal. 86 offers. Here we can, write maybe 5 and get a really good deal. Here it took 86. There are always good deals in every market. It is just it's what I call getting on the tracks. If you want to get hit by the good deal train, it is possible in any market to get a good deal, to get hit by the good deal train. But if you are not on the tracks, you don't put yourself in the way of good luck, you'll never get hit by the luck train. And for these sort of markets, the number one thing you can do is just write offers. But anyways, I wanted to show you. So right now it's very flat, and you will expect this to not be, it won't just be jumping up right now, because again, a lot of the activity is in this early spring time frame. But the fact that it's not being pulled down at all, we're not seeing inventory dip right now with months of supply, shows you that they're in this 3 to 7 price point. And if I go down to a 3 to 5, it's about the same. But the 3 to 5 price point right now I've seen has so much opportunity for properties that have been on the market a while and are just sitting. Days on market, again, you see a pretty good dip. If we go down to just 3 to 5, is not as much of a dip, because again, that particular asset for the single family in Charlotte is there's not the same buy sell inequality that there are in other segments. So going to the exact flip opposite, and this is where I wanted to show you an uncharacteristically hot set of markets. If we look for single family, and we're looking for something that is going to be more than an acre, it is absolutely bonkers. And I'm going to also add in here single family, we'll say 700K plus. Do you see that? 71 days on market down to 42 months of supply. Got to crunch the numbers. It is at the lowest it's basically ever been, unless you go all the way back to January of 2023. And look at, this stuff was sitting. The number of deals that we saw last fall, this was actually in one of my last market reports I called out last fall. I was like, this is one of the wildest times to be buying acre or multi-acre upscale, I won't say luxury, some of them are luxury, but just upscale properties. Because last fall, they wouldn't move at all. People were doing price reductions. There was properties that should have sold for $950 that sold for $700. The deals were just insane. And in the last 6 months, and I was like, there's no way this lasts. It's just short-term market fear, because there was no rational reason for it. And you could see it literally just in terms of the buying cycle for last summer, excuse me. And then through the winter, some people pulled their markets or their homes off. Some people aggressively reduced the price. But what you see is it literally halved in the supply. It more than halved in just the last month. So much stuff started moving, just flying off the shelf. And this is one of the wildest swings that we have ever seen. Now, two things I want to point out. Again, looking at the data, what you're going to notice is we are back at the similar spot to where we were on this. Similar-ish in terms of supply, market supply, to last March. And why that's also relevant is we saw some insane market behavior last March as well in the 700K plus single family acre lot type properties. It's just a real popular it's real popular because people want lifestyle. They want to be able to have chickens. They want to be able to have farm fresh eggs and a big garden and no HOA. And they want to be able to have some space and still maybe some proximity to things, but not feel like they have to, they have to be in some kind of subdivision. And what's really interesting is, again, we saw some crazy market activity, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to last or not. I didn't think so based on how 2024 went, but it's hard to say. And so then we saw it cool off. So much stuff that people heard stories of how things were selling in February, March. They started listing in April, May, June, July, especially May, June, July. Then stuff just sat because there were no buyers. All the market absorbed. The buyer absorbed that were in the market, absorbed the inventory back in early part of the year. And so, especially if you are looking for this sort of property or thinking of selling, if you're thinking about selling, call me literally today. Like, I'll put this on the screen right now, 980-449-3750. Do not wait. Do not walk, run to try to get your home on the market today if that's what you're looking at. And if you're looking for buying this sort of property, again, we got to just write a lot of offers. We got to wait for the right property with the right market conditions and be the right buyer for them in order to still get a good deal. Because otherwise, you might really just be overpaying, and then you're going to get, to some year where you need to sell in the middle of summer. And you're just going to get creamed by the supply-demand inequality curve. And so it's really, really important, especially if you are buying a nicer property on an acre lot around this somewhat January, but especially like the February, March timeframe, February, March, April. Make sure you don't get sucked into the hype or the FOMO, because it will, like, I've seen so many people that ended up just way overpaying because they bought at the wrong time of year. And they had an agent that wasn't representing them well and wasn't really pushing them to think through the decisions they were making and pull them back from the edge before they went a little too crazy and just overpaid. So, I'm going to cover, let's see, next up I want to talk about, a little bit about inventory, pricing trends. So one of the things I did notice as well, let's go back to just looking at everything as a whole, is percent of original price. Now this is a little bit misleading because guess what this number does not show you? This number does not show you what the true original price was. What this number shows you is where did the property close relative to its last sales price. So again, March numbers came in ridiculously strong. One of the biggest bumps up we've seen, like February to March last year, was flat. So if you just take that into consideration, everything has been like what we saw the last 4 or 5 months, where it's like, okay, 3 to sometimes even 5% below market value is appropriate. Right now, it's a wild swing, and this is again the monthly, so you see the seasonality here. If we look at the rolling 12-month data, it won't show you that the same kind of bump that it really should, because see, now it still is trending down versus here bumping up. That's why it's really important to be looking at the right data with somebody that is giving you the right interpretation. Otherwise, you're going to get bad information. Nobody wants that to have happen. So right now we are seeing like at ask offers over ask offers are the most common place they've been in a while. Like, sure, May and April a couple of years ago were pretty hot. But in terms of the last like 12 to 18 months, right now is one of the biggest swings, because when people see and feel this trend of price reductions, right? When there's a quick snap back to a new equilibrium, people don't see and feel that right away, especially if you're not in this stuff every single day. I do this all day, every day. I love the numbers. I live for the numbers. I'm weird, and I embrace my weird. I'm a massive nerd at heart, and I say that with pride because I'm not going to let I went to Purdue, and I survived cramming a 4-year degree into 5 years for robotics engineering, and I'm gonna squeeze all the juice out of that I possibly can because I spent too much time on that degree to not still enjoy living in the numbers, loving in the numbers. Again, like looking at the acre plus properties, you're gonna notice here. And again, I'm pulling this stuff live. Like, do you see that? Do you see that when I talk about all the stories that I have of real life stuff, I'm going through this live with you. All the numbers came out this morning. This 91.5% for a 700K plus, you could get properties at like a 9 to 10% discount a couple of months ago. And now, because of the supply-demand inequality, you are lucky if you get a 3 to 4% discount on ask price. And that is with so many properties coming on market in that upscale luxury acre lot property market segment. It is this massive snap in terms of offer strategy, and unless you are living it, you do not see it and feel it. And so this is also why I say, again, if you have that sort of property, you're thinking about selling, you know somebody, call them, tell them that you love them and that you love them making more money. And one of the ways they can do that is by considering selling in the next 30 to 45 days. Like getting it listed in the next 2 weeks. Actually, for those of you that don't know, because I really don't promote my listing services on here that much, we offer a same-day listing service. We can get your property, get basic photos. We still have our full, super high-end video, photo, and digital promotion package that we do for all of our listing clients. It takes a couple of, it takes a few days for us to get all that stuff processed, but we can get the basic introductory listing photos, get your property on the MLS, listed on all the different home sites, and put together your individual property marketing plan. Like from the time you call to the time that it's listed on the MLS can be anywhere from 4 to 5 hours up to 24 hours is kind of worst case scenario. Because this is again a huge opportunity right now that I don't know if we're going to see for a long time. Really. And also you can see here too the big dip, like I said, September, October timeframe. So a little bit depends on the year. So 2 years ago it was November was the big dip. Last year was October. And really the way I generally will gauge this is sometime around the end of year. So this year, or 2024 was actually January was that month. There's 1 month, it was December in 22, where there's just this massive dip in demand, this huge increase in the number of people that really need to sell, and there's just so many opportunities. And most types of assets will have this sort of seasonality. The thing though is even though there's the rule of thumb, which is there's 1 to 2 months that are really good around the end of every year, living in it, feeling it, and seeing it are very different things. Because even here, 94% back in February 2022, even when things were insanely hot, February of 2021. But then you look here, February was actually starting to warm up, and then March was insanely hot. You got to just look for on those pricing trends, whether you're buying or selling. This, guess what time you shouldn't be selling around here? You should be going on the market end of February, beginning of March, and then you can crush it. Because seasonally, that's what the data shows. Why would you be doing anything other than what the data shows unless you're taking advice from somebody that has no idea what they're doing? And shouldn't do that because you got me. That's why I put these videos together, so that I can put you on game, give you some sauce, and help make sure that you are very well informed to make great decisions with the largest asset that you, or likely one of the largest assets that you own. Right now, lower price. So talking about days on markets and buyer behavior. So what am I seeing? The biggest thing is lower price point buyers are feeling really hesitant. They see a lot of scary news headlines. The news cycle has been very active recently. I'm going to stand up. My sit-stand desk is going up. And so those headlines make them very hesitant. And you see this again in terms of months of supply, right, on low price point condos. Has just gone up and up. If it'll crunch the numbers. So that's something that we've seen. Right now, the higher price points, especially like actually one of the other price points that we've, you can see that they're pretty big jump up. One of the other things that we've seen as well, let's see if we can, days on market. We'll say, I had the acre on, that's why condos were so skewed. I was like, I don't think that's the right number for condos. Here we go. Yeah, 5.1 months, tracking upwards. So what I was going to say for waterfront, so we're going to get rid of this. We'll say single family. I'll probably change the pricing here in a second. We'll say waterfront. But really it's just been anything above 1.2, but especially anything above like 2-ish million, especially if it's waterfront, that sort of thing. You're going to see, again, beginning of last year, not popular. It was a real tough time to sell this time last year. And you kind of see that too. You see the spike. The best time is to get listed somewhat. You still want to list somewhat early so you can really catch the summer, but a lot of the inventory gets absorbed through the summer. And if we look at days on market, it's real choppy just because of the low volume of homes that you're going to see. But you can see there's, good Lord, this is so choppy. Do I have something selected I don't realize? Single family, 700K plus. Waterfront. It might just be because, just because waterfront is so. Let's try doing this a different way. It's not going to be as clean in terms of actual waterfront numbers. But we're going to go and pull up data for we'll say we'll say 2 million, 2,499,000, and then 1.5 plus. So, what you'll see here, and this is again what I'm talking about, this is insane. Median days on market. February, 36. That 1 million to 1.5 million price point, 8. Do you see this? Wild swings in this market, just all over the place, right? It has really heated up in a way that, like, we saw the difference, because some people will point this out that we saw this last year. We didn't. 25 to 5. The 25 was a fluke month. It was just from low volume of listings. We had a lot more listings this year, and still this massive dip in median days on market. And because a lot of people are looking at selling this year that weren't previous years, sure, the month supply is a little bit of an uptick, barely statistically relevant, compared to past years where it was flat or like and then big jump from March to then April, May, June, because a lot of those properties do list in April, May, June. Part of that's because it's just a convenient time for people at that price point, especially if they got kids in school or what have you. It's a convenient time. The summer is just a convenient time to move, and they value convenience. Both buy side and sell side. So there's just a lot more liquidity in the market during the summer, and so even though you see more months of inventory, guess what? It's because that's when a lot of the homes are being bought and sold. And outside of that, they're sitting. That said, it is just like, again, we saw the most inventory we have in a long time, but the days on market, it was like trending up, and then February, and then boom, March was 8 days on market. It's just an insane swing. I've seen it, I've felt it, especially with some of my more discerning, a little bit more upscale price point clients. And that's why, like, I had to make I'm probably going to start doing this every month on April 1st, but I had to make this one immediately to get this market update out as fast as possible, because there's so much change in the market right now, and I cannot emphasize enough, like, just how wild the swings are. Conversely, I will say again, let's see if I can change this 300 to, we'll say 600. So the 300 to 600,000 price point, single family, yeah, relatively, a little bit of increase or decrease in days on market, increase in activity. The supply, again, has just been kind of flat, and that's because even with increased buyer activity, there just hasn't been enough increase in activity to really drive more of a seller side advantage. And so this year is going to be really interesting for that kind of mid-market single-family price point. We're going to see what happens. I'll give you kind of the quick rundown. This is really a lot of the things I wanted to cover. If you got curiosities about interest rates and why I think that we're going to see those butter down this year, I've been very skeptical the last couple of years, and I guess I was right on that as well, but we'll see what happens. I'm a little bit more optimistic this year, but again, we'll see what happens. My takeaways, whether you're a buyer or a seller, we'll talk about buyers first. The market has started to swing wildly in favor of sellers. I do not personally think that is going to persist, but even if it does, I'm not worried, because we're going to continue to have a very steady strategy of making good offers, and we'll make as many offers as we have to in order to get a good offer accepted on the timeline that you want to move. The key is patience, and if you have to move on a tight timeline, it just means we got to loosen our requirements a little bit to get more options that are acceptable for writing offers, that are appropriate, have a good likelihood of getting accepted, and preferably are going to still be a really good deal, or at least a pretty good deal, better than market average deal, because that's always the goal. And on the it's the number of offers we got to make. For sellers, this is one of the hottest market swings in your favor in the last 5 years. It is a very strong opportunity. If you're thinking about selling, it is worth at least exploring. And so I would strongly recommend that you give me a call, shoot me a text, and we can put together some time to chat about your home selling options. And if it makes sense, or if you're not sure if it makes sense and you want to test the market, we can talk through what that looks like with our team. Call or text 980-449-3750, or WhatsApp if you're outside the country for the buyers. And buy side, if you're thinking about moving, You're not sure where to move, check out the Charlotte Areas Quiz. You can get a personal list of areas that match you and what you're looking for by just answering 7 quick questions. It takes 30 seconds. Super easy, and it combines all of my experience from doing hundreds of these one-on-one consults over the past 4 years, helping people, hundreds of people, move to Charlotte, and packages it up into a super quick, super easy 30-second quiz. And yeah, I'm excited to see what this year has in store. It's already been a pretty good start to the year, and I think it's only going to get better from here. I'm wishing you a very happy, prosperous 2026, and I'll see you guys here in the next live stream, next market update. I try to do live streams many days a week. Try to do at least 1 to 2, if not 4 to 5. And so if you have ideas for live streams or for topics you want to hear me talk through, drop them down in the comments below. My name's Lucas Roller, your favorite trusted realtor here in the beautiful Queen City, serving both North and South Carolina. Reach out anytime. Love y'all, and have a phenomenal